Brother, we're ready to go. All right. So, Dr. Christian Pena, thank you so much for joining. We'd love to have special guests like you come on to our show and provide a little bit of insights and golden nuggets, not only to the football community, but to the general society and how they can improve their health, improve their overall outcomes within whatever journey they're doing, whether that's recruitment or life. And we're looking forward to hearing what you have to offer and what you have going on with Covenix Health. So, without further ado, Dr. Christian Pena.
Oh, but thanks for having me on, bro. I
Of course,
appreciate it.
man.
Pumped
Absolutely. So tell us what's going on in the world of Dr. Pena and Covenix Health.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had a quite a wild ride. I used to play football in high school. I was actually a tri sport athlete. I played football,
Mm.
baseball, basketball, and then fell in love with baseball. My dream was always to be, MLB baseball player growing up. Not to take it away from football, but football is a great sport. It taught me probably more in high school than baseball did. But I became a pitcher, ran into a couple shoulder injuries. My labrum just went back in my junior year. That hurt a lot of the recruiting for me. And so my senior year in high school, I could barely throw the ball 20 to 30 feet, but I just played center field, and like every ball that I threw back in the infield was super painful, but got it done and was still one of the top players in our division. And then that kind of just shot me for surgery. First year, I went to Biola, which is an NAI
Mm.
school down in Southern California, a very competitive league in California, and basically had a bunch of just D1 dropouts. And that came to NAI. I just remember first showing up the first day, like everybody was twice my size. I was like, what am I doing? Recovering from shoulder surgery, it was a slap tear, and went through the grueling rehab because unfortunately with the labrum, they didn't have peptide therapies or anything like
Hmm.
that back in the day, or PRP. And so with the labrum, there's not a lot of blood flow. So it's kind of like a death sentence for a pitcher. Unfortunately, the first surgery didn't take, went through a whole year of physical therapy, and I could still barely throw the ball. Went back to my surgeon. He's like, yeah, it didn't take. The sutures kind of ripped through the labrum even more.
Wow.
And then, so football is actually some quarterbacks kind of went through this injury. And what they did, my second surgery, I was so stubborn. I just didn't want to give up. And my second surgery was actually a tenodesis, a bicep tenodesis, where they actually cut the bicep tendon and screw it into the head of the humerus. That way it doesn't fray with the labrum every time you throw. But the thing with that is you just lose every arm angle, every action. I think Brett Favre had the surgery, if I remember correctly. But I could throw the ball in 4 months, but the velocity was about half of what I had, and I
Mhm.
couldn't rebuild it. And just, but I worked with what I got. I walked on was the last cut, and I barely made it at Biola my second year. And then I transferred over to Laverne, University of Laverne, and still played. But I kind of met a fork in the road with being an athlete. I was a person where I had to kind of be all in on something. I always had the background of wanting to be a doctor, but I think my GPA was honestly like a 2.9. And I was like, dude, I don't want to be a bartender the rest of my life. I eventually kind of got to grow up. And so I did. I quit baseball my fifth year in college. Took me 5 years to graduate because of all the classes that I had to redo. And ever since quitting baseball, I never got anything under A minus. So
Mm.
we're talking the big heavy science classes, OChem, biochem, cell bio. And I took 6 weeks to study for my MCAT and showed a progressive trend in my GPA. And I applied to one school. I really wanted to be a doctor, and I got in, which was AUC, which is a Caribbean medical school, and got in. And the next thing you know, I was on a flight to the Caribbean.
Wow.
And the Caribbean medical school was crazy. It was very tough, but it gave me a shot, right? And kind of fast forward to residency, did really well. Actually made the dean's list a couple of times, which is something I never did in high school or college, and showed some pretty good scores, but it still wasn't enough to get into what I wanted, which was emergency medicine. It
Hmm.
was very competitive at the time. And so I didn't match, and that was really tough. And then at the end of the day, there's a thing called a second match, which is a SOAP. Kind of complicated how they do the match process, but in the final round of that, I thought I was gonna be out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm $400,000 in debt, and I did match the very last second to a general surgery program here in Miami. So I did a
Wow.
prelim year of general surgery, which was crazy, and then the following year made myself more competitive, and then matched in emergency medicine. And I just graduated 2 or 3 months ago, and so now I'm an emergency medicine physician that's going into starting his own practice in performance medicine. So that's kind of a little bit of background.
That's incredible. So, Christian, it looks like not only you've got a little taste of everything here. So previous injury, you've tasted the injury bug, right? And I think if you're going to be any type of athlete, you're going to come across this hurdle at some point. And not only is it a physical injury that may be not allowing you to perform at your best, but mentally too, right? That's draining. When you know you can perform at a certain level and you're not able to based on a certain ailment or injury, that is so hard to stay confident in your abilities and to push forward, continuing to believe in your capabilities, your performance. So injury is the number one reason or the number one thing that we talk about in our program. And your best ability is availability. If you're not on the field, if you're not making plays, your value in the marketplace, in the recruiting world drops significantly. So you have that experience, you understand what comes with injury. So I think that's going to be incredible for the audience to hear that perspective coming from a physician like yourself. And then NAIA, huh? That is something that a lot of people just forget about, right? Within this recruiting world in athletics, that outside of the NCAA, you have other governing bodies that provide opportunities for athletes to play and receive athletic scholarships, whether that be a partial scholarship, an academic scholarship. So I think, just quick for the audience, NCAA, NAIA, and junior college are all different governing bodies, and they offer opportunities for athletes to continue their playing career. So NAIA folks, we'll definitely jump back into that a little bit later to talk about what that exactly is and how some of those opportunities appear. But as you can see here with Dr. Pena, he chose that route and it seemed to have worked out for him and gave him an opportunity to finish his playing career. You also mentioned a little bit about PRP, Christian, and that hit home to me because when I was dealing with a knee injury, I had torn my PCL and MCL, the surgery, but my recovery was a little bit slow. And what they had saw was a cyst formed
Mm.
after that surgery that was causing a little bit of pain when I was running. And then we finally came to PRP, and maybe you can, enlighten the audience a little bit more about what that is exactly. But that procedure, I truly believe, got me back onto the field. It was really night and day difference in regards to my recovery. We locked it in a knee brace after the PRP just to keep it stable. And then when I came back onto the field, I had no more pain and I was running back at full speed. So huge proponent of PRP just because it worked for me personally. Everybody's different and your body's going to react differently. But for me personally, PRP was fabulous. And then your just journey through this recruiting process for residency and becoming a doctor, right? If there's any other field that I think could be as competitive in the recruiting world, it's going through medical school, matching to your residency. I mean, this is some serious stuff here that you had to overcome from a recruitment journey, in the right fit, right? Applying to different schools to see where your scores or your abilities match, and then taking that opportunity and maximizing it. And we tell our audience and our players all the time through this recruitment journey, options are your friend, right? Having multiple options to evaluate, decide from, and you got to be active with it, right? It's not just going to walk through the front door and say, "Hey, I'm here and I'd love to change your life." It's, when you're going through those applications for residency, you're maximizing as many as you can to give you those options that you can choose from and help get you to the next level. So I'm
Mhm.
excited to hear how we're going to dive into this. And then you mentioned one last thing that says making yourself competitive when you were applying to those residencies, right? What was your edge, Christian? Like that's what we talk about as well too, right? If you're just a good football player, if you're just a good student, you got to be both in this competitive recruiting environment for collegiate athletics. And especially now more than ever with a lot of these rule changes, you've got to find your edge. What's making you competitive in the marketplace? What's making you stand out? And getting that attention from coaches to help take you to the next level. So, folks, we got a physician, a former athlete, and now he's moving into Covenix Health, where, from what I'm assuming, Christian, you're combining both of those experiences. So maybe tell us a little bit about your vision and how you see that role playing with professional athletes or collegiate athletes or even high school athletes. How can men's perform help them obtain their goals?
Yeah, so I think it was kind of going through medicine and being pissed off because of how many sick patients came to the ER. They're all on the same medications, and kept an open mind. I know that big pharma has a big, I guess, head hold of our curriculum in med school, and a bunch of these studies that push these meds, they're all on statins, calcium channel blockers, beta blockers, and it kind of made me mad the fact that my friends now, if we go through the same thing of this is mediocre medicine, 20 years in in the future, my same male colleagues are going to be on those medications and be sick because us as America,
Mm,
we are so incredibly sick right now. I don't think we realize that. And it comes from our diet. I know we just talked about Casey means that she does a great job of kind of delivering that. I'm not functional med, I'm performance med, because I truly think if you consider yourself as an athlete again, that's going to help out metabolism and health and performance in a huge way. So I do specialize in males over 30, but I just love performance in general because I think once you go through medicine with a lens of performance, it changes the game. But I mean, we can touch on so many things. I would like to talk about injury for a second, if that's okay.
absolutely.
Because I think for your audience, and especially if I was a father going forward, I think we do a lot of overtraining for our younger athletes because I mean, that's what happened to me. I just threw the ball so much, baseball, football, basketball. I think the biggest part of performance is recovery. And I think a lot of our overhead athletes, especially. So I know football players, unless you're dealing with the quarterback, but I mean, you guys are on the field, what, 4 or 5 hours sometimes, and you're training in the morning and you don't get lack of sleep, or sorry, you have lack of sleep, and the
Lack of
recovery
sweat.
process is just like crazy in high school and college, and your professional athletes are probably better because they have a lot more help. But I think as if I had a little brother playing, like we really need to focus and make priority your number one, because I think if I had a little better handle on that, then I probably wouldn't have led to my injury, and injuries can be saved by that for my big time status. So
And when you say recovery, Christian, what does that look like? What is recovery? And then, for a practical example, I think when we have a game, whether that be Friday Night Lights, college football on Saturday, professional on Sunday, typically the strength and conditioning staff, wants us back into some type of functional movement as quickly as possible the next day to help move out some of that lactic acid that built up during the game. What does recovery look like to you? And for the audience at home, what are some things that they could do on their own or within their own house or gym, whatever that may be, to help them recover?
great question. I think my answer is going to be pretty boring, but I think the number one thing is nutrition, hands
Hmm.
down. The body is just a symptom, inputs and outputs. And I'm sorry, but if you're trying to become and fight for that scholarship, you probably don't have the talent of Ocho Cinco and can eat McDonald's every single meal. Like, you need to realize whatever you put in your body that has a direct reflection for your performance and your recovery.
Hmm.
And there's only two mandates that I truly believe is your protein level has to be adequate. Number one. So we're talking 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So let's say
Mm.
you're a wide receiver out there, you're like fastest lightning is Tank Dell, but you weigh like a buck 40, and the college athletes all want the, Julio Jones looking wide receiver. So
Yeah.
you're not going off of your pounds, what you weigh now. You want what those college recruiters want. So let's say they want you up to 170, 180. Okay, that's 170, 180 grams of protein per day. That's a mandate. Like, protein, you need lean body mass to, produce force on the football field. And I mean, nowadays, there's no excuse, because dads out there, you can have the most, just chat GBT it, like literally download it and put in the prompt saying, create me, you are my now sports nutritionist. Create me
Hmm.
a meal plan, and put in your inputs, your weight, ideal body weight. You didn't have to give it macros. Just say, we play football and produce me a 30-day meal plan. Boom, you got it. And you take that thing, because I'm telling you, I use ChatGPT in the field, or AI, every single day now in the ER. So there's a little quick tip that, I mean, we
Hmm.
didn't have back in the day, right? You would have to like see a sports nutritionist and pay all this money. And so I think it really starts with nutrition. And who cares if you look weird, having to, have all those meals prepped up every single day. And hydration is huge too. I don't know if you've heard of Andy Frisella with 75 Hard,
I
but
have actually, but yeah, break
yeah,
that down, Christian.
yeah. So I did that during my general surgery residency, and I think it's one of the best, even though he doesn't really do it for like sports athletes, but the one best thing out of that was drinking a gallon of water a day. And so
Mm.
I went to the store every single day, got a new gallon of water, and everybody looked at me. I was a freak in the medical field. They're like, "Do your like kidneys? Do you not love your kidneys? You're going to drench them." No, drinking a gallon of water is perfectly fine if you have fine kidneys, and your kidney will adjust for your electrolyte levels.
Hmm.
Fine. So nutrition and then hydration comes in with that as well. And then number two is your sleep and your recovery. I don't know, how'd you sleep in high school and college? Was
It
it pretty
wasn't
good?
nowhere near where I
Yeah.
needed it to be. I had a very intense schedule though. I was on track to graduate undergrad 3 years. I was playing football and I actually started as a true freshman, and I did the Corps of Cadets and Army ROTs. So my experience is just not typical. But now in current day, I will say sleep is my number one priority personally.
Yeah.
And I am just a completely different person. My ability to think and be creative, my physical wellness has just improved overall. So I have seen tremendous improvement in my personal performance with prioritizing sleep no matter what. And then of course the diet, Christian, it's just vital.
Yeah. So I read a study. I was kind of looking into this because I don't really work with athletes. I mean, my specialty is 30 years plus, and I see all the sickest patients over that. But I was kind of doing some more research I was like, oh, I mean, what's up with sleep with high schoolers nowadays? And it said that I think it was 60 to 7% of high school, so not football, just high school across the
Hmm.
board, don't even get at least 7 to 9 hours. And they also did another study that one extra hour of sleep can reduce the chance of injury by 60%.
Wow.
So when you talk about performance and recovery, I think nutrition, hydration, sleep, and I'll give you two supplements that are so well studied. The number one is creatine. I'm sure, creatine is so funny. It was
Hmm.
back in the bodybuilding days, and now it went away. Now it's back. But
I get
Really
asked about
creates,
it all the
yeah,
time, Christian. So
create
please.
is so, it's probably one of the most well-studied supplement we have out there. And it's just an easy 5 grams per day of creatine monohydrate. If you're not on creatine, you're missing out on ATP production, which produces force out on the football field. I think every should be on it. There's not a really downside to effect to it. And the creatine nowadays, I get it. There's a fear in bodybuilding that make you too bulky and took away from hydration. No, it actually increases your hydration. So absolute yes for creatine for performance. And then for recovery, I really wish I would have taken magnesium back in the day when I was an athlete,
Mhm.
just at night to help recovery. Magnesium is not only a vasodilator to calm your central nervous system, it acts on every single muscle pathway with our sodium, potassium, ATP pump, which creates muscle contraction. It has so many good benefits. So for me, just a couple of quick things for the recovery side is creatine and magnesium. We talked about diet a little bit, sleep, and I think to get more complex, it would actually be lab work. Look, so I work with peptides, I work with bioidentical hormonal therapy. That's not us because that's not, that's on the WADA ban list, that's NCAA ban list. But there's no ban list for understanding how your blood work is and what's going on under the hood. And for athletes, it might be tough to get these 4 labs that I'm about to talk about because your primary care is probably like, what the heck are you? Why do you want these? But actually, number one, of course, you could get a CBC, a CMP to kind of look at your electrolyte levels, your basic metabolic panels. So that comes with sodium, potassium, chloride. But what's actually interesting is I would really love a ferritin level on every
Mm.
athlete. And so you're probably thinking, Christian, what the heck's a ferritin level? It's basically iron storage. So basically iron storage within your blood and your bone marrow. So essentially, what does iron do? So iron has hemoglobin, and what does hemoglobin in the red blood cell do? It transports oxygen to your muscle. So if you imagine on a Madden game, right? So your stamina level, that's basically what your ferritin level is. Kind of, play with me a little bit,
Hmm.
but if your ferritin level is down, you're not going to have enough oxygen to be transported by your tissues. The sooner you're going to raise your lactic acid, you're going to burn out on the field. So I think knowing a ferritin level is huge. And then the next thing would actually be a CRP, which is basically inflammation, which I would think is a great surrogate for overtraining. So if your CRP is super high, I would love to take a look at that and be like, hey, you might be going through too much right now. You might need to scale down your training and your volume just a little bit because your body has so much inflammation right now. You might need to take that down. Again, these labs, you might have to go to your primary care and finagle them and ask them for these labs, but it could be done. And you could also nowadays get your own labs. So
I was gonna say like, there's plenty of private labs, like any labs test now, right? That I'm just thinking out off the top of my head, but
yeah,
you can go to those and pay cash if if you want. And then just to confirm as well for the audience, Christian, as you increase through the workflow of football, you go from high school, college, and then professional, the more you got to start paying attention to details, right? And from what I'm hearing, it sounds like this is a great way to give you that edge, right? To monitor your biomarkers, see where you can change a little bit of those lifestyle habits, like you mentioned, sleep, hydration, nutrition, and then be able to perform better on the field.
if you're grinding for a scholarship, I think the easiest low hanging fruit is what I'm talking about right here. And they matter because this is something you can control, right? You can control what you put in your mouth. You can control your sleep as well. You can control helping yourself out because this is the little things that get you that scholarship. If you don't have that
100%.
much talent, if your talent isn't up here to where you just walk in and every coach notices you, this has to rise as well. The attention to the details and stuff that I'm talking that I wish I knew back when I was an athlete. But obviously I know now, knowing the human physiology. But again, just for the parents. So things that you can definitely get your own labs for your son. Okay.
And this is good for the parents too, though, right, Christian? Like if they're these parents want to explore their own health journey, they can do this alongside with their athlete and see the same benefits and improve their overall lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, if you're over 30, I'm adding probably 20 to 30 more biomarkers up to this. I didn't want to complicate
We'll save that for another episode, Christian. We'll
yeah,
focus on
I
the
didn't want to
parents.
complicate, as an athlete for high school or college, I don't think you need that much to be honest, because you're probably the healthiest you'll ever be. But I just kind of thought of the top four. The next one's a vitamin D level. Vitamin D is huge in metabolism and testosterone, hormonal production, obviously bone production as well. And to limit injury, I think you need an adequate storage of vitamin D. And the last one is not to, I was afraid of actually bringing it up, but just to monitor, not to do and act on it, but I would love to get a testosterone hormonal level. You don't got to go crazy and get a free testosterone, a sex hormone binding globulin, but I would love to just monitor an athlete's testosterone because we do know that it is down from prior years. So
Mm.
again, parents, so a ferritin level, a CRP, a vitamin D, and a testosterone. If you can get those labs to kind of just monitor it, and you don't even got to go to me. You can again, plug it into ChatGPT or some AI that can help you out as well. But I think those are some tips. If I was an athlete, that's what something that I'm trying to provide as much value as I can, just because I want your audience to flourish. And if they can somehow improve using performance medicine, like I'm all about it. So
Absolutely. And let's look at the long-term play of an athlete, say in high school or college, and goes and completes those labs. That's a great baseline to have just in your overall wellness and health journey throughout life, right? Because the earlier you start, the better you're going to have that longitudinal view of your patient's journey to see how are those levels rising or decreasing. And then you as the physician, it gives you just so much more analytics to look at and be able to provide that coaching and expertise.
100%. I think it just gives you the power and your ownership within your own health. And I think you, at the end of the day, you can't rely on a doctor, you can't rely on a physician for your own health. That's your health. Like, of course, you find the right physician, that's great. They're going to obviously want the best for you. But by no, by bar none, the best health is when you actually take complete ownership and do some research. You don't got to be, go to medical school to understand everything, but at least kind of have a general basis of what these labs mean and how your health is progressing going up and down, to where you can kind of fight off those bad days and give yourself the best shot to earn your scholarship. And then again, like you said, you're not going to be an athlete forever.
Hmm.
So, you know,
Absolutely. No, and you said it there too, Christian. It's you have so much information available at your fingertips these days, right? And just as Dr. Pena can't be the one to force you to do these critical tests, or he can give you a meal plan. He can give you all the advice in the world, but you got to drink the water, right? We can bring the horse to the water, but we can't make it drink. And same with recruiting as it is to your health journey. As a physician, you can't truly take out the actions that you need your clients to do or you're advising them to do. They've got to be the one to do it. Same with recruitment, right? Coach Klein can't get you a scholarship. I can't offer you a scholarship, but I can give you the right tools. I can give you the strategy to get you in the best position possible to receive those opportunities. And boom, when one lands in your lap, be prepared and take advantage of it. Same as with you, Dr. Pena. You can give them everything, all the resources they need, but at the end of the day, that individual's got to execute and put action into place in order to see the results they want.
absolutely. Yeah, it's gotta be them at the end of the day. They're one playing on the field, but I think the more resources they have, the more ownership that they take, the better shot they're gonna have at getting a scholarship.
Absolutely. And then we talked a little bit earlier on injury and, of course, recovery, and we mentioned PRP. So, Christian, could you give us a little overview on exactly what that is and some of the
Yeah.
benefits behind it?
Yeah, platelet rich plasma. I did a whole rotation. I was kind of thinking sports medicine as a fellowship, and then I kind of wanted to go do my own thing in performance medicine. But basically, for a whole month, all I did was PRP injections, where we take a lot of the ultrasound guided as well. We take some of your blood, transfuse it, and we inject it back into the area of inflammation. And the thought is that oxygen rich platelets go and reduces inflammation around it. I found out that orthopedic surgeons hate it because it's trying to bypass surgery in surgical
Mm,
cases. So every ortho that I've been to doesn't like PRP. Again, this is just a broad sense. I haven't met tons of orthopedic surgeons, but I think it is taking a little bit away from their business. But so I worked with a emergency trained sports medicine fellowship, and that's all they did was injections. And some of these patients came in and they're like, this is game changer. I felt a lot of relief and bypass surgery that way. So I know a lot of with your football players like you yourself, ACL, MCL, that is a route. That's something I don't do. It's just something I learned, but it's definitely a viable option. I like it better than steroid injections. Steroid injections cause actually more inflammation down the road. Like obviously steroids, you give a quick hit of steroids, it feels amazing the day and the day after, but after that, it
hmm
actually increases arthritis down the road. So PRP, there's a different couple of options, and PRP actually kind of is its whole. And I'm not a specialist in PRP, but I do know, and I've done it before. Have seen from patients' hands, I guess, like in real life, how it improved their knee pain, and they're, able to be an athlete again, where they're a
Yeah.
bunch of CrossFitters. So
Yeah. No, and of course, again, we mentioned audience, go on Google, go on ChatGPT, research what platelet-rich plasma is and how that procedure works. But Christian, when for the person that's never heard of this, doesn't have any idea what PRP is, can you explain the procedure a little bit? So it's not coming from a third-party source, right? This is your own healing mechanism that your body produces that's being extracted from a blood draw. They spin it in
mhm.
a centrifuge. And please take it from there and give the people just an understanding of what this actually is. When they hear platelet rich, it sounds a little complicated to some, for me,
Yeah.
when I first heard it, I was like, what the heck? But maybe you can just give a quick little, what is that? What actually goes on in that procedure?
So yeah, exactly kind of what you said. They take your own blood and they usually have a centrifuge in the office. Kind of depends on how many minutes and what machine that they have in office, but the
In a
one that I work,
centrifuge?
yeah, just it separates the plasma and the platelets, and then they take that back into. We use the ultrasound because ultrasound is really cool, where you can actually
Hmm.
see on the screen the musculature of the knee or the shoulder, or wherever the site of inflammation is, and you can actually see some tears on the ultrasound as well, and you inject it right there and get some really good results from that. And I sometimes it does cause some inflammation during, but every time from what I heard, I never got it personally done, but from what I've heard from patients, the next time I saw them, like, oh my God, I love PRP. So, but yeah, I think PRP is very common now. I'm pretty sure they do
Hmm.
it in college. It's shouldn't be banned. I honestly, I don't even know if it's on the WADA or banned list or
Hmm.
NCAA banned list. I never really looked into that, but yeah, I'm very interested in peptide therapy down the road. But unfortunately, this isn't for really our audience's discussion because peptides are on the ban list from what I know. So, but
And
maybe down the road.
and maybe down the road, and we can also dive into it for the parents that are on the call if they have any interest in that route. Because when you're going through this recruiting process too, Christian, it's not just the athlete, it's the family, right? You're going to the games, you're traveling, you're doing off-season showcases. I mean, this is a big commitment by the family. So not only does the athlete need to be in shape, but as the parent, you're flying around, you're traveling, you're going to these games. You want to feel good, you want to feel healthy, you want to be able to be active and involved. So a lot of times they may just be the parent as interested in improving their own health and performance as the athlete. So for that audience, whether that be the mother, the father, the old coach that, is looking to get a little pep in their step, maybe you can give us a little bit of overview on what, those peptides are and what are your thoughts?
Oh man, it's good. Now you're really talking my language. Now I have an audience over 30. So I'll just start basic. A peptide is essentially a string of amino acid that your body already naturally creates. Not sure if you might have heard of it. One of the major ones is BPC 157. Essentially, BPC 157 is a string of amino acids already produced by your body, by your gut. And what it does is, let's just say this. Let's say you have a golf course that's not watered at all. It looks like crap. What BPC 157 does is stimulates angiogenesis. So now that crappy golf course is now getting watered. And that water is angiogenesis by creating new blood vessels, having blood flow go to the muscle. So this
Hmm.
is so great for injuries. Let's say if you're a father and you play pickleball and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, my elbows. So you can actually do a sub-Q injection right near the joint. And I think it's far better than PRP, honestly, but it is incredible some of the results that we're seeing. Unfortunately, the FDA has banned BPC 157. I don't know why. There hasn't been, I mean, again, I'm not FDA, I'm not big pharma. I'm sure they have their reasons monetarily wise. But what is next down the pipeline is called pentadecaarginate, which is just one amino acid off from BPC 157. Same effects. So that's just one aspect. I mean, when we're talking mitochondrial health, we can talk about methylene blue, NAD plus, all these things to increase your energy. If you're a parent, just like, oh my gosh, we're going from tournament to tournament. Mitochondrial health, your mitochondria has to be functioning to create ATP. That's the end
Hmm.
game, right? You need ATP for energy. So I'm not gonna I haven't really looked to see if NAD or methylene blue is on the NCAA or NAI or the WADA ban list. So
Hmm.
I should have came prepared for that. But at least for your parents out there, that's definitely an option. I mean, peptides go pretty deep and they're very, I don't know, they've been around for years, but they're just now kind of being discovered and used more amongst the masses, but specifically for high performers, people wanting to get their lives back. I mean, peptides go pretty deep. We're talking growth hormone secretagogues, so making sure your growth hormone, your IGF levels are optimized. And now the big peptides are the GLP-1 analogs for weight loss. So those Ozempics, the Wegovy's, I think they're doing it completely wrong. So I look like working with a compounding pharmacy, and because I see a lot of patients that start these weight loss drugs and they lose a bunch of muscle, but they lose a bunch of weight, but 40% is lean body mass. You're screwing your metabolism. So I think we need to, it's a great drug, the semaglutide, tirzepatide, now a triple agonist coming down the line is retatrutide, which is a triple agonist, which actually preserves more of the muscle mass. We're talking complete body recompositions. So this gets pretty deep and I love talking about it. I don't want to talk too much, but
We could save that for another episode.
yeah, but that's kind of like just a short dive into peptides therapy and what's coming
Hmm.
down the tracks.
Awesome. And I'm sure that's great for the parents to hear. And, again, you don't know what you don't know. So talking to a professional like yourself is always promoted before you make any dietary or nutritional changes. Speak with someone like Dr. Pena, speak with a registered dietitian who can give you that subject matter expertise on what's best for you and your profile, because not everybody's the same. And I will also add to our audience, for athletes that are playing still, whether high school, college, or professional, always check those banned substance boards. We always refer to as well NSF certified, which is a third party lab that does a lot of testing for sports supplements to make sure that they are within regulation and compliance. So it's very, very important. The last thing we want is anybody to take something that could show up on a drug test. So always, always refer back to your team's trainer, your team's dietitian, or reach out to a third party professional like Dr. Pena, or look at the NSF certified website to make sure whatever you're taking is approved and you're not going to have any trouble with that. And lastly, before we wrap up here, Christian, I wanted to just jump back again to the hydration, nutrition, and sleep. And you mentioned something earlier that was really interesting to me. And this is something that I had to learn a couple years ago. But, during my time in playing, you can't care about what other people think when you're doing something different than the mass. So if you're going to study hall and a lot of the other players aren't going to study hall, you're weird. But you know what? It's okay to be weird. When you go to the dining hall and you start focusing on those macros, you make sure you have your protein, whether that be chicken, fish, or beef. You've got your vegetables, you've got your carbohydrates, while maybe some other players are eating fried food, or they're getting out. They didn't go to dining hall and they went to the fast food joint down the street. It's okay to be weird when you want to give yourself that edge, when you want to separate and make it to the next level. And honestly, like you said, there's going to be those outliers where guys can eat whatever they want and still perform. But those are outliers. That is not, when you
Mhm.
look at an aggregate, what the true professionals are doing to perform at their maximum capability. So take stock on yourself. It's okay to be different. And then what's your edge? What are you doing differently than these other players who may have the same talent on the field, but if they're not fueling their body and they're not performing the same in that third, fourth quarter, but you are, now you're making more plays, that's your edge. That's your difference. That could be your scholarship. That could be your contract. That could be whatever it is. But don't be afraid to be weird, and don't worry about what other people are thinking when you're doing what you need to do and you're doing things the right way.
I couldn't have said it better. I just want to end on kind of more of in the physical, I guess like you look weird. So what? But go all in. This is your time to be an athlete. You're not going to have another time the rest of your life.
Mm,
So take everything with a grain of salt with what people say, but at the end of the day, trust your gut and grow as a human being. And so what if you don't get that? Like not getting a scholarship, it's not going to be the end of your life. But you
hmm
take what you learn and the tools that you gained attempting to get the scholarship and attempting to play college football. And I tell you what, the tools that you learn on the way from me learning, I never got a scholarship. I fell
hmm
short every single year. And then I played Division 3. But me looking every single day on the lineup card and me still being on the bench, that fired me up. After the game, I would go by myself to the batting cage and hit for 2 hours. And that alone in that process, obviously it was a different, could be a different scenario for football. But I learned myself in college and absolutely grinding it and loving the process and attention to detail. So look, obviously you have a scholarship to get. That can be yours. It's just going to take effort, attitude, things that you can control. And at the end
hmm
of the day, if you don't get it, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the
Failure.
world.
Failure
Yep.
breeds success long term, right? You've learned from those mistakes, you collect lessons learned, and then you improve next time. And just like you, Dr. Pena, you didn't get that scholarship, but you got that residency, right? So
Yeah.
all that failure up to that point, you've learned to overcome adversity, and you had your goal, and you're like, look, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep figuring this out. However, I gotta piece it together, but we're going to make this happen. And that's a type of profile of the individual that we love to work with, and we've seen tremendous success. So as we wrap up here, Dr. Pena, I have an interesting one for you. Not only what would you recommend with your previous athletic ability for anybody in high school or college right now, but if you had to provide to a former athlete who is interested in going into medicine, what would you recommend?
Oh, to actually go into medicine like a
So say
provider.
they're done playing, they finish their playing career, and they want to transition into becoming a doctor like yourself. Because that's
That's
that's a
a
that's a very unique combination, right? Not many former athletes transition into medicine. So what would you counsel someone that was looking to make that transition?
The first thing I would say is actually find a mentor within the
Mm,
space and to see if that's something actually that you want to do. I'd never had that. My mom was a chiropractor, which I kind of saw a little bit of the healthcare becoming. She is a doctor, but becoming an MD just has a little bit extra with residency. So my first thing was maybe find another physician, spend a day with them, see if that's something that you actually like and can see yourself doing. See the amount of stress that they have when they're on writing notes, because it is a lot. That's why I kind of want to go out of the field and start my own thing with Covenix. But yeah, spend the day with them, ask a million questions to see if that fits your lifestyle down the road, and ask about different specialties too. Because becoming a doctor, it vasts wildly from being a general surgeon to a dermatologist, right?
Mm.
So gaining more information, finding somebody within that field to see and ask questions for. I mean, if somebody's interested, I'm more than willing to answer any questions you guys have, your audience has looking down the road.
And
And
we
then
do see
number
that, Dr. Pena. We see a lot of athletes that, are great with their academics, especially if they go on to like a D3 school, and not just pinholing it to D3, but they have a little bit more flexibility with their academics when you're at that lower level, and you have some great institutions that are D3. But we see it. We see it. We see a lot of athletes that, want to transition into that role. So, like you said, mentorship is key. It's how I got into doing what I'm doing here with, recruiting and coaching these athletes is we have subject matter expertise. We've gone through that journey. We've gone through that process, and we can give you a lot of experience and knowledge on what to look for, how to navigate certain decisions. So that's extremely valuable. And if people do have any questions for you, Dr. Pena, how can people reach you and where can they find you?
Yeah, so my email is drpena@covenix.health. So it's DRPENA Covenix, that's COVENIX health. And then if you want to just DM me on Instagram as well, it's Pena_MD. Feel free to reach out. I mean, your audience, I would love to help out in any way that I can. Yeah, and provide any value for you guys.
Awesome. And I'm sure we'll do this again. We'll jump on a call in a few months and see your progress and keep you updated on what we've got going on here at Full Ride University. But thank you again so much. I'll drop all your information in the description below for the audience. Forget to like, subscribe, comment, share. Coach Klein, this is Dr. Pena. We'll talk soon.